Good evening. I'm John Bryan. I'm a West Virginia civil rights lawyer. If you've never seen any of my work before, and I've been sort of burning the midnight oil tonight and really every night this week trying to finish this, the paperwork in this lawsuit where we've taken the West Virginia governor to the West Virginia Supreme Court, and also we're battling the state Republican Party before the Supreme Court. And this is all coming to a head at a hearing on the oral arguments here this coming Tuesday. So hopefully the connection is holding up. We've had some crazy weather here, and being in the mountainous regions of West Virginia, we have really crappy internet service. So in any event, this is going to be a quick video just describing what is going on at the moment. This case has been in the news. If you've been following it in the news, you know that just here this past, I believe it was the 22nd, Friday the 22nd, I think it was, the governor basically gave us cause to file a lawsuit just the following Monday. So this has been a very quick process. And if you haven't been following along, this is what happened. So there, in the West Virginia legislature, there was a vacancy that happened in the seat of Derek Evans, which was West Virginia House of Delegates, District 19. And that's in Wayne County, West Virginia. It's over on the western side of the state. It's near Huntington, West Virginia. So Wayne County, District 19, it has its own legislative district that's entirely within Wayne County. Now, there are 100 House of Delegate districts in West Virginia. Some of them are multi-county districts. So there's a difference, and that's important. But this particular district was solely within this particular county. So what happened was, generally when a vacancy pops up in the state legislature because somebody dies or resigns or whatever the case may be, there's a process outlined in West Virginia law about how those vacancies are filled. Now, the statute it's 3-10-5 of the West Virginia Code. And I'll pull that up here, but that's basically titled, where is it? All right, vacancies in the state legislature. So this is the statute really that we're fighting about at the Supreme Court. And this says that if there's a vacancy, the committee members at the local level who represent that district where the voters went into the precinct and voted for this legislator who died or resigned or whatever happened, these elected party committee members of the same party that of the last legislator to hold the seat, they get to choose a list of 3 qualified candidates because they're local, they're elected, they know their community. They get to give a list of 3 to the governor, and the governor has to choose from those 3. And that's all laid out here. It's very simple. So in the case of a member of the House of Delegates, which is what we're dealing with, the list shall be submitted by the party executive committee of the delegate district in which the vacating member resided at the time of his or her election or appointment. Okay, so it seems simple, right? Well, apparently I disagree, the governor disagrees, the attorney general's office disagrees, the Democrats disagree, and the Republican Party disagrees on exactly what that means. Now, it seems pretty clear to me the delegate district in which the vacating member resided at the time of his election or appointment. So the state party what happened is they take that to mean, or they argue anyways, that means that they get to pick. And that's just not how it's happened in the past. That's not how that law reads. And that's not how the law is designed. It's not designed to allow state party officials that are not necessarily even from that county or voters in that county or know anyone in that county to choose the governor's choices. And the important thing about choosing the governor's choices is because you don't want the governor to just pick his buddy or anyone he wants. You want the elected committee members. And again, these are elected positions. If you vote in West Virginia and you're affiliated with a party, you've seen on past ballots, you click these boxes for who are you voting for Republican executive committee in your county or Democrat executive committee in your county or whatever the party is. So these are elected by the voters that won that seat. And so they get to choose the list of 3 to go to the governor. Now, under that law, nobody else gets to choose. It doesn't say that the state party gets to choose. So the argument here and what happened is the county executive committee in Wayne County got together as the law provides and has always been done. And they had a meeting. They debated, they nominated candidates, and the applicable committee members who were from that district, they voted on it. A list was put together by the chairman and he sent it to the governor. Well, under this law, the governor has 5 days to make a choice. So day 1 went by, day 2 went by, and we get to day 5. The media is calling, the candidates are calling. A lot of people are calling the chairman of the county party, asking who did the governor pick. So the chairman's trying to get a hold of the governor. He can't get a hold of the governor. They're not returning his calls. And so finally he gets a call back. And this is after the governor has not made a choice. It's the general counsel and chief of staff for the governor. And he says to the chairman of the county party, look, according to the state GOP acting chairman, you guys did it wrong. It was supposed to be done differently on different letterhead, blah, blah, blah. So according to the state party, we're going to do this over, or it's going to be done over, something to that effect. And that's what the state party does. So the governor did not make a choice within the 3 days. The state party then takes out an ad in the local newspaper. And as the AP reported in the Washington Post the other day, the locals were surprised to see right under the advertisement for Jim's Spaghetti, you had an advertisement for, hey, would you like to be a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates? Send your resume to the state Republican Party, or something to that effect. And so they had already met, they had already made their choices, but here comes the state. The governor wouldn't choose from their choices, and the state comes down, and the state acting chairman, his name's Roman Stauffer, he's not elected, he's just acting because the prior chairman resigned just right about the same time as this was happening. And so he comes down and takes over the process with other party officials, and they provide their own generic party questions to ask for anyone who wants this position, and they give a bunch of interviews. But now, instead of the 4 committee members, which were the total from District 19, who were going to vote on this list of 3, now this second meeting run by the state only had 2 of the committee members there. Now, to make a long story short, they had this deliberation, and 2 of the same candidates from the first list that the governor did not choose from were picked and put on this new list. But there was contention over the third. The third guy on the first list was taken off, and some new guy was not on the first list. Now, this list ended up being submitted to the governor by the state party. And as soon as the chairman found out, he sought out legal counsel. We ended up filing a lawsuit before the Supreme Court to try to stop the governor from choosing from that list. Now, here is the immediate defense that they brought up when the governor's office called me and the attorney general's office called me and wanted us to drop the case. Here was the reason. The chairman, my client, the chairman who signed the first list and presented the first list of candidates to the governor, his signature appears on the second list. Now, part of what we've done now is explain why that happened. So we've presented 2 affidavits, or we will tomorrow be presenting 2 affidavits. Well, 1 affidavit, really. The other one's a signed statement to the Supreme Court explaining how the local party signatures ended up on the second letter. And the circumstances there are basically that they were asked to sign a piece of paper before the deliberations were even over, and the paper wasn't filled out. They didn't quite understand why they were signing it at the time. And then the list was filled out by the state party and submitted to the governor without them ever having seen it after being finalized or approved it or certified it as the state is saying they did. So the second list is invalid if we even get to that. But the whole point of the case is we don't get to that because the governor was required under the law to choose from the first list. Now, what's surprising here is that nobody seems to be able to agree, at least in the state Republican Party, in the Attorney General's office, and in the governor's office, about who gets to choose these three candidates. And what's really going on here that I pointed out in the post that I put up on my website yesterday. Let me pull that up. All right. So what's really going on is what I call the red herring. There it is, the red herring. What's really going on is we have something misleading or distracting that has been put in front of us to distract from what's really going on. And what's really going on is that in the summer of 2020, despite what that statute says about who gets to be involved and choose the nominees for legislative vacancies, the state Republican Party got together in the summer of 2020 and they passed new bylaws that completely purports to take over that process from the local committees. They get to call the meetings, they get to ask the questions, and they have to certify the vote to send to the governor, which is what they tried to do in this case. But here's the problem, and what I think a lot of people understand, but some people claim not to understand, is that there's a dichotomy or a trichotomy really here of what's called political party committees under state law. And this is sort of getting into the weeds, but here's what's at stake. There's about 775,000 local, everyday, regular voters in West Virginia that are about to get screwed. They're about to get disenfranchised of their ability to have representation in the legislature if there's a vacancy in their district. So the state party, in other words, is taking over the process and taking it from their local elected committee members who are there for that purpose because they know the community, they know the potential candidates, they know the local issues, and now it's being given to these state party officials who may have no connection at all or no knowledge at all of this particular district, of this particular county. So each of the 100 districts for the House of Delegates in West Virginia has about 18,000 people in it. So there's 43 by our count of these similar districts that are entirely within one county. So here's the deal. There's three types, and this is nonpartisan. So, and it's probably similar in other states, but there's an organizational structure under the law for political committees, political parties. And under West Virginia law, they're called political party committees. And there's a section of the state code under the election law section of the code, which is chapter 3, that creates or allows for the creation of these committees and delineates what their powers are and how they're organized. So the quote political party is not just one organization. For either the Republicans or the Democrats, they're actually made up of an amalgamation of numerous different what are called executive committees, but really they're political party committees. And they're a creature of statute. They're set up under West Virginia Code 3-1-9. And I've got three different types here, if you can see that. So you have three different types. These are all subsection A, B, and C of that code section. So under A, and this is extremely confusing if you go to read it. That's why I think a lot of people don't fully understand it. Lawyers and judges included. So subsection A sets up the state party, the state executive committee. And who makes that up? Well, you have voters in each state senatorial district, however it's district, with 4 members per district, 2 men, 2 women. So by state law, they then convene and they choose 3 additional members just from what's called the state at large. And at that point, they're basically 68 or 70 members, and that makes up the state party. The state and the executive committee of the party, that's like the corporation that meets and has rules and votes on things. So what they did is through the years, they've brought that number up to around 130 people vote right now in West Virginia as far as the state Republican Party, because they've included all of the county chairs. There's 55 counties, and they've included other officers of the organization and so on. So that's the state executive committee, and they have certain responsibilities and authorities under state law. And then you have the next subsection, which is subsection B. And this is where it really gets confusing, is you have legislative district executive committees. So these would be congressional district or multi-county state legislative districts. Could be senatorial district. Actually, there's could be senatorial districts. It usually is. And it could be multi-county House of Delegate districts. So this is where the confusion starts, because these, being that they're multi-county, exist in more than one county. So therefore, they require their own executive committees that can exist across multiple counties. And congressional districts, of course, are going to exist across multiple counties, especially in a small population state such as West Virginia. And that brings us to the third type of political committee creation in West Virginia, and that's the county level, the county executive committees. That's section C, and that is basically all the 55 counties in West Virginia have their own Republican Party executive committee and their own Democrat Party executive committee, and I'm sure there are some others. So they have certain responsibilities under West Virginia law, particularly when it comes to replacing or nominating vacancies on the ballot or in the legislature if there's a vacancy. Now, both the county executive committees and the legislative district executive committees, they're both on the local level and include elective representatives to represent each of those, either the county or the legislative districts. So they both have executive committees. Now, what's the difference? Well, there are 40 out of the 100 House of Delegate districts in West Virginia, 43 of those are all within one county each. So there's 43 of those that exist solely within their respective counties. So the remainder of those are multi-county districts that exist across more than one county and are going to have their own executive committee to operate things like vacancies. They're still local, they're just across different counties. So for the 43 districts currently that exist solely within one county, the law doesn't provide that they get their own executive committee. They're just a part of the county executive committee. So that's where it's confusing. And that's where a lot of people don't understand this, is that the law says the district committee, the legislative district committee, but only if it's a multi-county legislative district does it actually have its own executive committee that can convene and vote. If it's one of the 43 that are within a county, then they are part of the county executive committee. So that's why through the years, it's been the county executive committees who have, when there's a vacancy, have met and voted and nominated the choices for the governor to choose. And really that didn't change until the summer of 2020. Getting back to what the Republican Party did, they amended their bylaws to completely take over this process and to give themselves what's essentially a veto over who the choices are, and really a monopoly over carrying out these meetings. And that's not what the state code says. It does not give them that responsibility. If you look at the 2018, for instance, Republican bylaws, the state Republican bylaws, they don't mention legislative vacancies at all because it's not within their power. If you look at the current, right now, Democrat bylaws for the state of West Virginia, they don't mention legislative vacancies either because they have no right to do that. And they know they have no right to do that. But for some reason, you have this power grab that's been engaged in by the West Virginia party that people didn't even know about. And it only really popped up because this vacancy occurred. And they tried to they did take the choice away from the county. The 4 county members that voted, who were elected to their positions to represent their constituents, voted on 3 people. And that there wasn't one of the 3 that ended up getting actually appointed by the governor. So we filed the writ of petition for writ of prohibition, not petition for writ of mandamus with the Supreme Court is the next day of business from when we found out the governor was given this second list. Now, the governor was served with it and knew that it had been filed and knew that it was pending. And what does he do? Before the Supreme Court issues an order, he goes and appoints that new guy on the second list, knowing that this is in dispute from the county who had the legal authority to give him the options to choose from. So he chose anyways. And part of what they were doing was they were going to argue to the Supreme Court that, well, now it's moot. He made his choice. And they've made that argument. And the state parties made that argument. And apparently there was at least one of the Supreme Court justices who voted not to even hear the case on that, on those grounds. But here's the thing. It's only moot if it would be impossible for the court to grant relief. And the fact is if the first list was valid, which it was, then the governor has no legal authority to appoint anybody off of that list. So he can appoint Rusty Shackelford if he wants to, but the legislature can't seat Rusty Shackelford because it will have been an illegal appointment and made in the absence of any constitutional or statutory authority for the governor to make that appointment. So one of the other interesting things that have happened since we filed this is looking at the Attorney General and the governor's response that they filed, which I think was simply misunderstanding what I'd explained about the trichotomy of what political party committees actually are. So it's not just one organization and the state's at the top and everyone else is subordinate in a subcommittee of the state. No, not at all. The county and the state are separate legislative or separate political party committees. They each have their own officers. They have their independent own organization, their own rules, their own bylaws. One is not subordinate or subcommittee of the other. And that's completely misunderstood on a massive level. Now, the state GOP's response was more of, well, look, the county has to follow the state GOP bylaws. And if we insert ourselves and give ourselves a veto and control over the process, then the county has to follow that, or else the governor can't make his choice from their list. And that's absolutely nowhere in the law at all. In fact, to the contrary, the law governing the political party committees says that they cannot change the law with their bylaws. Their bylaws, their internal regulations, cannot be in violation of state code. They cannot be inconsistent with the state code. So certainly that's exactly what the state GOP has tried to do here. Again, summer of 2020. So look what I found, because a lot of people had contacted me and provided me information on let's see, on the way things have been done in the past. And I'll show you real quick. Here's the letter somewhere here. All right, there's the letter from the Wayne County Republican Executive Committee that went to the governor, signed January 13th, 2021. And the original that went to the governor was actually signed with a signature. So that is what, after 5 days, and the time ran out for the governor to make a choice, this is what his general counsel and chief of staff said. Well, it was done wrong, wrong letterhead, and the county secretary should have signed off on it. And he got those from the state GOP bylaws. They included those requirements. So those were not in the Wayne County bylaws, and it was not in the state code that gives the county this authority. So somebody sent me this. We went back to 2018. Well, there was a vacancy in October of 2018 due to the death of Delegate Frank Deem, who was a Republican. So therefore, the Wood County Republican Executive Committee, and again, that's a district that was wholly within one county, they convened, they had a meeting, and they made 3 choices. And here you can see it's signed by the chairman, the then chairman of the Wood County GOP, and the secretary did sign them. And that's what was submitted to the governor. And look, the governor appointed a person off that list. There's the newspaper article from October 30th, 2018. Governor Justice appointed Tom Azinger to fill the vacant seat. And he was right there. See, Thomas Azinger. The governor used this to appoint a vacant legislative seat, and there he's posed smiling with the person that he's appointed. So that was just in October of 2018, and now the lawyer for the governor is telling the Wayne County Republican Party that they're not the appropriate committee to do this, but yet there it is in October 2018, and they did it. In fact, hopefully you can hear this, but the general counsel for the governor went on the radio, and he said something to the effect of, since I've been there, this is how it's always been done. It's never been on county letterhead.
And I'll tell you, we've done, I believe, just memory serving, between 5 and 10 replacements of delegates and senators since I've been here. And in every one of those instances, the state parties, both Democrat and Republican, were involved in the process, and they were the ones that sent us notice of the list of names.
But does the Ryan, as you said, you've done it a bunch of times before, but is the state chairman usually the one that signs off? I thought that it would be the delegate district.
Absolutely. Everyone we've gotten from the Republican Party before since I've been here had Chairman Potter's name on it as well, along with the local.
Okay.
So so this was a one-off that we've seen where a local county chairman signed a letter unilaterally. The first list he signed unilaterally. The second letter.
All right. So the governor's general counsel, chief of staff, claims that since he's been there, and he's been there since sometime in 2017, that they have never received a vacancy letter from a county Republican or Democrat executive committee with nominees for the governor's appointment. Well, here's one right here. That is an absolutely false statement. October 23rd, 2018, while he was there, the state GOP chair's signature is nowhere on there, was not involved whatsoever. In fact, I talked to the people involved here, and the state party wasn't involved whatsoever, not at all. So an absolute false statement. Not that it matters, because nobody's going to fact check them, but just an absolute false statement. But we found more. So I mentioned that the state chair there now is an acting chair. His name's Roman Stauffer. Well, we did some digging back in 2010. Get this. Back in 2010, he was a county chair in Mercer County, West Virginia. And that just so happens to be one of the counties that has delegate districts or a delegate district in it that is wholly within that county, and I believe a couple of them. And he just so happened to have 2 legislative vacancies in those districts come up while he was chair in 2017. So this is the guy that says he had to sign off on it and it had to come from his letterhead at the state party. It can't come from the county. This is how this guy handled it in 2010. Look, the Mercer County, he's the chair. He's signing as the chairman of the MCREC. That's Mercer County Republican Executive Committee. There he is. And here's what's happening. This is a chain email out to everybody. The Mercer County Republican Executive Committee will hold a meeting via teleconference at 7:30 this evening to discuss the vacancy created by the passing of Delegate Mike Porter. Please use your dial-in information if you wish to participate. So this is to everybody that's in the Mercer County Executive Committee. And how do we know? Well, 2, Mercer County Republican Executive Committee and interested parties. From Roman Stauffer, Chairman, Mercer County Republican Committee, regarding the appointment and replacement process for Mike Porter, October 1st, 2010. So here we go. This is what we're doing in the Executive Committee. Replacement in the House of Delegates. We must submit 3 names to the governor to be considered for appointment to the West Virginia House of Delegates. The person appointed will serve the remainder of his term in the House of Delegates. The 3 people we select must be registered Republicans and reside in House District 25. Secondly, they were going to discuss replacing him on the ballot because that's another authority of the county Republican Executive Committee or Democrat Executive Committee. And then he's discussing who he thinks is interested in it. So there's one email, but we found more. Let me pull up what is getting ready to get filed tomorrow. We found more emails and actually committee meetings from when this happened. Okay. Let me fast forward here. All right. So here's a bunch of stuff. All right. Mercer County Republican Executive Committee meetings from a lot of these meetings. So we had the chairman. Special teleconference of the Mercer County Executive Committee held for selecting 3 Republican candidates for the unexpired term of House District 25. Okay. Then Governor Manchin has 5 days to make his selection from these candidates. Okay. Here's a newspaper article from when one of these appointments was made. And if I can find the second part of that, well, here's another article. I think it mentions here. All right. Yeah. So this is from the Bluefield Daily Telegraph about what's going on here. So he says Governor Manchin announced that he'd appointed Mike Porter Jr. And it says that the Mercer County Executive Committee submitted a letter Wednesday to the governor with the names of 3 nominees. So the governor's general counsel says this has never happened. This is a one-off. This is a one-off thing. It's never happened before. Not only did it happen while he was there and his governor was governor. I mean, look, it's happened in 2010, and it's the same acting chair who was the county chair then. Look at this. The Mercer County Executive Committee submitted a letter Wednesday to the governor with the names of 3 nominees. Okay. Dr. Joseph Ellington, Dr. Zane Lawhorn, and Thomas Mike Porter Jr. Manchin commended the committee for submitting the nominees' names in a timely fashion. So look at the difference of how Manchin, and that's what's surprising here, is the Democrats, they don't even try to disenfranchise the local party and committee members who represent their districts. They don't even try to do that, but the Republicans did. Even Governor Manchin, he thanks the committee for sending him the letter in a timely fashion. What does Justice do? He does nothing until the time runs out and doesn't return calls. And then when they finally get a hold of his lawyer, says, oh, well, you did it wrong. It's not supposed to come from your executive committee. It's supposed to come from the state party. Well, that's not what happened here. Gee, I wonder why my client was told to do it this way by everyone who knew, because this is the way that it's always been done. Going back to 2010, here is a letter from Roman Stauffer, chairman, then of Mercer County Republican Executive Committee. All right. Oh, that's for a senatorial district. All right, here's another one. May 28th, 2010, Mercer County Republicans recommend 3 names to replace Schott. So this is a press release sent out by Roman Stauffer, then chair. The Mercer County Republican Executive Committee met on Thursday evening and decided on 3 names to recommend to the governor to replace the Honorable John Schott, West Virginia House of Delegates, District 24. And these are the people they chose. Mr. Bill Cole from Bluefield, West Virginia, Marty Gearhart from Bluefield, West Virginia, and Ron Satfield from Bluefield, West Virginia. Again, chosen by the Mercer County Republican Executive Committee. All right, now look at this. Mercer County Republican Party Chairman, Roman Stauffer, not State Party Chairman, County Executive Chairman, hand-delivered a letter with the 3 recommendations to the governor's office on Friday morning. The governor has 5 days from the date he receives the letter to make the replacement appointment. He explains in his press release, the committee met Thursday evening and we discussed the 5 names who had expressed an interest in being considered for the recommendation. The committee unanimously chose 3 very strong names. All right. So, and there's more. There's more and more and more of it. And this is from the same guy who took over the process from my clients in Wayne County. And you heard the governor's lawyer right there calling them all just, they don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, this is a one-off. They don't know what to do. I've never seen anything like this. And do you understand why people don't like or trust our governor operating that way? Who is getting screwed over here? Who lost their candidate? The 18,000 people in that district who obviously wanted a particular person, lost that person, and now it gets nobody of that connects to them in any way. It's just somebody chosen by the governor for who knows why, with the assistance of the state party. And we can see the motivation of the state party here. They amended their bylaws to completely take over this vacancy process. What do those peasants know? What do the 18,000 peasants know in Wayne County in District 19? They're not smart enough to understand the issues that we state Republicans who, we understand the issues. They don't understand the issues. Okay. And the 42 other districts in West Virginia, each with 18,000 people, what do they know? They shouldn't be able to make those choices. We should be able to make those choices. We should have to sign off on them. We should have to say who gets to be interviewed and what questions they have to answer. And I should get to walk this letter over to the governor and be congratulated and put in press releases in the news. Even though back when I was a county chairman, I did it just as Wayne County did it. And none of this should surprise you with politicians and politicos like this. You do as I say, not as I do. That's how things work. So I've been working the past few days to respond to primarily the state Republican Party, because I think the governor's response just misunderstands the trichotomy of how political committees are set up in West Virginia. Just a misunderstanding. But the state GOP, they understand, and they filed a lengthy brief that is probably as good as it possibly could have been under the circumstances, because they are completely wrong in the law. So what do they argue? Well, they argue the facts. If you're wrong in the law, they argue their bylaws. These are all the provisions of our bylaws that Wayne County Executive Committee did not follow. And that's why, therefore they're very bad and their list was invalid and our list is valid, especially since we tricked them into signing. that is, and their lawyers did a great job of putting that case together. So it's taken me several days to put this, put some sort of reply to that together, and that's going to be filed tomorrow, but also with an affidavit from the chairman of the county and from the secretary of the county surrounding how their signatures got on the second letter, and that they were put on there at a time when not all the candidates had even been chosen, and the letter wasn't even filled out yet. And the affidavits explain how that came to be. So we're going to get that hopefully filed tomorrow, but the oral arguments in this case are coming up on Tuesday. I think it's at 2:00 p.m. It should be available on the internet to watch these arguments. So it should be interesting to watch, and I actually can't wait to find out what the Supreme Court rules. I just hope that they make a ruling in writing that explains, the basis of and the law behind whatever their decision is going to be. Because last time I filed one of these, they denied it and just said that they were denying it because it's not a regular case that you're appealing to them. It's an original jurisdiction case that's filed before them, and they have the discretion to just say no, and they don't really have to put anything in writing. All right. My dog Rex. John, are you now learning that the Democrat and Republican parties are actually crime syndicates? Washington, D.C. is occupied by former state officials. Therefore, the swamp begins. Well, they're similar, I think, to criminal organizations, but with one big difference, and that is that even crime wouldn't pay if the government ran it. So they wouldn't last very long. Lance, Australia watching. Thanks. I'm glad you're watching. I've been reading a little bit about some of the things that you guys have been dealing with in Australia. Sounds like they've let up some on their COVID restrictions, but yeah, please let me know. Send me an email about what's going on over there, as I'm interested in what's happening in Australia. Let's see. What else is going on here? Glenn Beck said today, it's a must. We take back local government and school boards. We're finished as a country. And that's the funny thing is in West Virginia, there was this so-called red wave of Republicans that won everything, absolutely everything. But in charge of the state party, you still have the same people that were there before who I think supported, Marco Rubio and Jeb, as far as I've been told. Really nothing in common with really concentrated, MAGA, America First type folks that you have, type of Republicans voting in West Virginia. Brian Hinch, why would they sign an empty list? Well, here's how the story is relayed, and basically they're having a meeting, and the paper was first by the state acting chair. It was kind of pushed over to the secretary, who described the situation and said, well, she's very young, she's new to this, hadn't been involved in politics or political committees before. And I think she was told to sign, and she signed. She figured it was just part of the process, something she had to sign, but it wasn't like, all right, I'm certifying the list of names to go, nominations to go to the governor. Because if you look at the list, there's empty lines that are handwritten in. And her recollection was at the time she signed it, the names weren't written in yet, because although the committee had chosen two of them, they were still arguing or going back and forth about one of them. So the names weren't written in yet. And after she signed it, her recollection was that she never saw it again. And after she signed it, it was sort of passed over to the chair, who was in conversation with someone else. And you got to sign a lot of documents with an organization. And it was presented as, all right, now you're here by certifying a list of nominees, because the process wasn't even final yet. So he signed off on it, and then only remembered later that he had signed something and didn't know what he had signed. And he called the secretary and said, what did we sign? Did we get a copy of that? No, they hadn't even given him a copy. So he never saw it after it was filled out. Yet it was presented to the governor as if he had certified it. So that's why he executed an affidavit laying that out, explaining under oath exactly what had happened. And that's corroborated by the testimony I've heard from the county secretary, and she put a little bit of that into a written statement. So, and in the event, it doesn't necessarily matter in my argument, because if the first list is valid, which it was, that's it. That's the be all and end all. The governor has a mandatory non-discretionary duty to choose from that list. He can't go back and choose anyone else. And the 5 days expired and he didn't make a choice. So therefore there can't be a second list. There can't be one unless that first list is valid. So while the second list is not valid, it's neither here nor there anyways. But it's good for context and explains really how they were operating this thing. Maddie, paralegal here in Florida, have proof of gender discrimination by a judge. What steps would you recommend? Well, there's going to be probably Florida law there involved with a judge, and there's probably some mechanism for filing a complaint against a judge in Florida, like there is here in West Virginia. Now, as far as federal law goes, if you have evidence that your rights have been violated, your civil rights have been violated by any individual, and gender could be one of those, would be one of those under federal law and probably state law everywhere as well. You can file lawsuits. The problem you're going to encounter with a judge, if it's an official capacity sort of situation, then there's going to be judicial immunity. And that's pretty much absolute immunity. And that's for a different video. It's a complicated topic, but it's something I'm actually looking at and going through right now in a different case. All right. Jim, well, what do you think of Patrick these days? And Jim's referring to the Attorney General. And as I've said, I don't expect to agree with politicians on every issue, certainly not in Attorney General. What I like and have always liked about Patrick Morrisey is he has been great for gun rights. He's been strong on the Second Amendment, strong on concealed carry, constitutional carry, dealing with other states, dealing with the federal government. However, he has fallen woefully short, in my opinion, in protecting us from our state government, which this past year has been much worse from our governor. That being said, I don't pretend to know the ethical limitations and intricacies of having to be an attorney general who is responsible for also being in the executive branch with the governor and representing him under many different circumstances. So, I always wish that he or his office would support me in whatever legal challenge I'm engaging in, but I'm used to it not happening. I'm used to it not happening. I'm used to not having anybody support me. So it's usually just me versus Goliath in every case. Red tape. And I have to call this the last question here because it's about that time. But it's a good question. Why is Joe Manchin still representing us? Vote him out. Well, it all has to do with the term of an elected U.S. senator. They're long. So he's not coming up for election. When is it? He's got like another 4 years. So yeah, it's absolutely unfortunate. Joe Manchin, he gained popularity as a governor because as a governor, you can hand out goodies all day long, give people jobs, do all sorts of stuff. And a lot of people thought he was a fairly conservative, middle of the road type of guy. And a lot of us knew that he wasn't. I mean, hell, even the NRA gave him a a rating and supported him over actual Republicans. And I mean, I could have told him what would happen. And, first shooting somewhere, he's wanting to be, first on the Sunday shows and the mainstream media arguing for gun control. And it's just one thing after the other with him. So there's no way to recall him. There's no way to vote him out of office. You just have to wait until he's up for election again. I don't doubt that when he's up for election again, he'll lose. But who knows? I mean, there's still people in all sorts of positions that I encounter in the practice of law, in executive branches and all sorts of boards and things that were put there by Joe Manchin. So I'm sure the swamp runs very deep. All right. So thanks for watching. And again, oral arguments in this case are coming up on Tuesday. So if you're interested, it will be, I assume, on the West Virginia Supreme Court's website. And it's around 2:00, I believe, on Tuesday. And so it'll be interesting to see what the arguments are, what the questions are from the justices. That you get like 10 minutes to talk per side, but you could start off your first sentence and they interrupt you with a question. That's how appellate arguments work. So you never quite know what you're going to be talking about. You just got to be prepared to answer any question. So I'll continue to prepare for that and hope that I'm able to address the concerns that the court's concerned with and shoot down the arguments of the other side and the Republican Party who's joined in the case. And I'll also note that from what I've been told, the Democrat Party was asked to come in and kind of support the Republican Party and refused. And, perhaps surprisingly, takes the position apparently that the voters in the district shouldn't be disenfranchised, at the stake of the state party wanting to just strengthen its powers. So good for the Democrat Party for not trying to do that to the voters of West Virginia. So I'll see you on Tuesday. Hopefully, if you watch that, maybe I'll do a video depending on how that thing goes. And watch the website at civilrightslawyer.com, my blog, where probably some point tomorrow I'll upload what I've been working on the past couple of days and the new documents I discussed, the new filing, our reply rather to the State GOP. And until then, I'll see you next time. Stay safe out there in this weather. If you're in West Virginia, it's pretty crazy out there right now. And again, hopefully this connection held out. And if not, then at least maybe the audio held up. Let's see. All right. Well, I will see you later.